So in my senior year of high school, I took a creative writing class, and in this class I learned how to, keep people engaged in my stories and really put my emotions into them. And I did pretty well in the class. And one day, I'm sitting on the floor, typing away, really drawing it out, and the teacher walked past me. And when they walked past, they said to me, "Tyron, I love how blunt you are in your stories sometimes." And while that was obviously a compliment to me and my prowess, a classmate thought differently. They said, from the other side of the classroom, they said, "That's just another way of calling you boring." Me? Boring? Don't make me laugh. No. They just didn't understand. They didn't understand the complex ideas, the emotions, the layers in my stories. I'm here today to prove that. Good morning, driven non-believers. And today, I'm not going to write 1 or 2 or 6. I know some of you are sweating out there because you can't get much higher than that. No, I'm writing 50 short stories, all right? And I'm going to show you how well I can do this. Now, I should probably explain what I'm actually doing. See, in my original version of this video, I was going to do 50 3-page long short stories. A beginning, middle, and end. But those of you in the crowd who are numerically advantaged should know that 3 times 50 is a lot of pages. And I ain't trying to do all that. So instead, I thought of doing something else. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do 1 page, 50 stories. And the idea is it's as if you took a book and just read the first page. And so in that first page, I have to include, obviously, the main character, the themes, and the conflict. And that's what I'm really interested about. Because for main characters and the conflicts, those are just pretty easy. It's the themes. The themes are the antithesis and what your story should revolve around. Almost the lesson of the story, right? And I'm curious, after 50 stories, what themes are going to reappear multiple times? Is there going to be a common thread of recurring themes that we go through over and over again? Or is it just going to be scattered everywhere and there is no connecting thread? That's what I want to find out. I told people around me I was doing this idea and they thought it was a great idea because they were also curious too, considering the type of person I am. I stuttered right there, but we're going to ignore it and we're going to get into it. In the first 10, it really dawned on me how long this was going to take and how slow of a writer I truly am. I knew I was a slow writer, but Jesus Christ, I didn't know it was this bad. Because with these scripts, it's pretty simple. I know what I'm going to say, I just have to write it down so I know how to word it correctly when I'm actually recording. But when I'm doing these stories, I don't know what I'm going to write. So the ideas are just coming to me and I'm going in, I'm writing them, I'm editing, and it's taking me forever. And I'm so glad I didn't try to do this all in one sitting because there was no way I could. But after I got through those first 10, I was kind of feeling, kind of good about myself. I kind of liked some of the stories I was writing. I was getting into kind of like a zone, a groove into things.
A few moments later.
So initially, this video was going to be segmented into every 10. So I would go through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, whatever. But it's just me repeating the same thing over and over again. So I decided to just take all of them and, all together, right? For both of our sakes, all right? You feel me? Now, when I was hitting the early 20s, my wrist was hurting really bad. Really bad. Like, even though, like I said, I wasn't doing this all in one sitting, it just added another thing that I was putting my wrist through. Like, another thing my wrist was having to strain. That's a mad motion.
Weird, buddy. You're weird.
But it wasn't that bad until I hit 30s. Then it was getting really bad, and that's when I actually discovered I can use my voice instead. And so throughout the 30s, I was using my voice a lot more in my phone, because using my phone, I could use the voice feature and it would type out whatever I said. The problem with that is I would ramble a lot, and then I have to go back in, correct any spelling errors, any punctuation errors, go back in and, really streamline the actual idea I wanted. So if it was just me setting up a scene, easy money, just say it. But if it was something I needed to be more thoughtful of, I could not use the voice. And I noticed after the 30s, I kind of fell out of favor with it. Another thing that I didn't expect to happen, but did happen all throughout this, was how much I wanted to keep writing the same story. I didn't want to go and change topics once I was at the end of the page. And so then I would get hung up on that and I would probably get distracted because I'm very easily distractible, which I also learned doing this, but it's not my fault that with a few clicks I can go peddle drugs and build my empire, alright? That game is too much fun. And then finally, I was at 40. I had 10 more to go. And I wanted it to be over. I wanted it to be over so bad. I was tired at this point. I was like emotionally exhausted. I wanted it to be done, but I remember what I said last video. That the biggest enemy of creativity is complacency. And that if I want to call myself creative, I have to learn what makes me tick, what makes me feel emotional, and put that down on paper. And so I took that and I went with it. After I was done doing what I had to do, I went back and I decided to actually read some of them. I like some of them. I'm not going to say I like all of them. I like some of them. I do have ones I just don't fully remember typing. Also, there's a poem in there which just flies in the complete face of this challenge because it was like it's supposed to be the first page of the book. Why would there just be a random poem in there? But I left it there because I really liked the poem, Dragons. And I'm not going to say what it's about because I feel like it'd be cooler if you went and read it and you could actually, see it yourself. But I think it's a really cool one. Finally, the bread and butter. The themes, the things that I actually was really curious about in this. And I wrote them down right here, and I wrote down some other notes I wanted to point out. After going back and reading some of them, I did find a very common theme. I wrote them down as percentages, and since some stories could have multiple themes, the percentages don't add up to 100. I'm pretty sure they add up to 104. But anyway, 4% of the stories show love, have themes of love, which is quite sweet. Moving on, 6% show pride, which I was really surprised about. I call myself the Prince of Pride, so wouldn't it make more sense that pride would be higher? And it was higher, but I'll get to why I got knocked down so far. Give me a second. At 14%, I have anger at establishment, which, yeah, at least when it correlates to me and my personal life, yeah, I've been very angry at the establishment and the just kind of odds I was born into. I feel like just being born, I was already given a disadvantage. And while I take that in stride and try to be the best I can be, I also understand that a lot of my issues have stemmed from just having a worse starting point. At 18, I have regret, which surprised me. I thought regret was barely going to be on there. But even though I regret only a few things, it just makes those things weigh on me harder. And so it does make sense regret is higher than I thought. Because regret weighs on me more than I think. 20% generational trauma. That kind of ties into anger at establishment, like I was speaking about earlier, but generational trauma, yeah. 20% ignorance. Now, this I'm not surprised about. Now, originally, ignorance and pride were counted as the same thing, but I decided to split them because I feel like the king in Reincarnated is more prideful, while the scientist and crazy was straight up arrogance, because arrogance is more, I'm better than you and you should know that about me. I am better than you and you should treat me with such respect. While prideful is just more of being proud of one accomplishments, but not thinking you're better because of it, but just holding yourself to not only a higher standard, but having a lot of self-respect and being able to respect others because of that. So that's why I had them split. I was one arrogant nigga. Like, I was insufferable. And I am honestly surprised that I had friends. And I am so glad that I did, because I'm still friends with some of them to this day. And I love them for it, because they've seen me grown into who I am now. And don't get me wrong, I can still be arrogant, but it's not my default. It's a switch I turn on in my brain when I need to. It feels more like a tool in my arsenal and not just who I am as a person. Now, 22% was self-worth, and this one came to a shock to nobody. I told this to my girlfriend and my best friend, and this was the least shocking thing to them, apparently, where it makes sense. I'm making YouTube videos. Self-worth kind of goes hand in hand with that, where you're trying to prove yourself. If I'm being honest, something I really hate about self-worth and all that is I will tell people that I am constantly trying to prove myself, not just in YouTube, but just in general. And they take it like a bad thing. I'm like, no, I am confident in myself, but I'm trying to prove myself so I can reach a higher standard for myself. But they're like, well, you have to be content with who you are. And I'm like, yeah, but I also need to be ambitious so I never become complacent. There's that word again. It's like word of the day on Sesame Street, dear God. But I told this to my girlfriend and my best friend, and this was completely not shocking to them, apparently. Apparently to them, they saw this coming. So, good job, guys. The shoot for 40. After going back and rereading them, I realized something. Well, I realized two things. First off, the first story on there is a full-on short story, like a beginning, middle, end. I guess that was before I fully decided on the reading the first page of the book thing. So you probably noticed that if you went and saw it. But a second thing I realized is that I was self-inserting myself in these stories, not like literally putting myself as the main character, but the main character was kind of a reflection of myself. And that's very interesting. I think the most obvious one of this were If Music Was Real and Kunta. If Music Was Real is a very obvious one. It's a struggling artist trying to break out. I'm a struggling YouTuber trying to break out. Easy as that. One-to-one connection. Booyah. Kunta. Kunta isn't as obvious. Or maybe it is as obvious. Who knows? Go ahead and read that and let me know if you figure it out. Put it downstairs. Yeah, do that. Now, like I said, I told this to my best friend and my girlfriend, and my best friend has some words to say that I actually wrote down, and he said I could tell y'all. It says, my stories are often a reflection of myself, so I may be ordering my values. What I believe he meant by that is the unintended consequences of these is that I am subconsciously writing mostly what I mostly think about. If we're taking his thought into consideration that this would be a percentage of how I think about things, regret just being dead in the middle is kind of surprising, while something as strong to me as pride is something way lower. Pride means a lot to me because I feel like it's very easy for someone to fall into the trap of, I don't like where I'm at in life and I wish I could be someone else. While I like to think of it as, I'm in my own shoes, I have made it this far. I have made it this far with this much weight on my back, and I should be proud of this fact. And I should also be proud of the fact that I'm not content being where I'm at and that I'm shooting for even farther. At least that's how I like to view things, because it makes me hopeful. And hope is something that we're all looking for. I am just rambling at this point, but god dang am I good at it. I don't really think of a way to end this video, so we're ending on a nice little yap section. I made this video purely for my own enjoyment. After my last video about talking about creativity, I wanted something to really push my creativity to the limit, you know, really put me to the bone dry level of creativity, you know, really suck it all out. Realize my wording there, but you got what I mean. Really get myself engaged in my own creativity. It's 50 one-page stories that I could legitimately write out in the chapters. And if I do a part 2 of this, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my favorites of these, like Sun, Reincarnated, the one with the detective and the demon that I cannot remember the name of, but I know I would want to do that one because that one just seems fun, into full-blown chapters. Because it just seems so fun to do. And then maybe after that, I'll just write a whole book. I don't know. I like writing because in a way, the characters can interact with each other in a way people can't in real life, or the way people want to in real life, but they're too scared to. It's a fictitious scenario that could never happen. But it's when you take humanity and put it in these fictitious scenarios, that's when they become something special, because then you can relate to these people, these icons that you believe are superhuman, are just so amazing. They show humanity, they show weakness, and you relate to them. It makes you feel almost superhuman. Good night.